It was a Thursday evening in late September, and the air in the narrow alley behind Elm Street felt thick with the smell of overflowing dumpsters and stale cigarette butts. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, and the only light came from a sputtering streetlight at the corner, casting long, jagged shadows across the cracked asphalt. The distant rumble of traffic hummed like a dull heartbeat, mixing with the occasional yap of a stray dog and the clatter of someone dragging a shopping cart down the street. The air was crisp, but not quite cold, carrying the faint scent of rain from earlier in the day, the kind of dampness that clung to your clothes and made everything feel tired. This was the kind of neighborhood where people kept their heads down, their doors double locked, and their voices fearful. Daniel Danny, 12 years old, was crouched behind a dumpster at the end of the alley, his small frame almost swallowed by the shadows. Danny had sharp, observant eyes and a shock of unruly brown hair that defied every attempt his mom made to comb it down. His jeans were perpetually too short, his sneakers patched together with duct tape, and his faded blue hoodie sported more holes than fabric. Danny's dad had passed away 2 years earlier in a workplace accident, leaving his mom to juggle 3 jobs just to keep the lights on in their cramped apartment. Danny helped out however he could, collecting cans for recycling, running errands for neighbors, anything to scrape together a few extra bucks. He'd learned early on that survival meant staying quiet, staying invisible, and staying out of trouble. But tonight, surprised, trouble had found him. Before we go any further, if you believe in courage, in protecting the innocent, and in standing up for what's right, even when it's dangerous, then please hit that like button, leave a comment, share this video, and subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Because stories like this remind us that heroes come in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes the smallest voice can make the biggest difference. Danny had been taking a shortcut through the alley on his way home from the bodega, a loaf of bread and a carton of milk tucked under his arm, when he, surprised, overheard voices. Low, menacing voices. He froze, instinct screaming at him to hide. He ducked behind the dumpster and peeked around the edge. 4 guys were standing near the back entrance of an abandoned warehouse, their faces half lit by the glow of a phone screen. They were dressed in baggy clothes, bandanas, and sported the kind of hard expressions that Danny had learned to recognize and avoid. One of them, a towering figure with a shaved head and a snake tattoo snaking up his neck, was doing most of the talking. He comes through here every Thursday around 9, rides a black Harley, big dude, leather vest, Hell's Angels patch. The guy spat on the ground. Thinks he owns this neighborhood. Well, tonight we teach him a lesson. Another guy snickered, pulling something from his waistband. A gun! Danny's breath hitched in his throat. His heart pounded so hard he was sure they could hear it. We wait here. When he rolls through, we block the alley, and we finish it. No witnesses. Danny's hands trembled. He should run. He should get out of there and pretend he never heard anything. But something stopped him. His father's voice, echoing in his memory. Still always do the right thing, Danny, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The men dispersed, moving into position. Danny waited until they were out of sight, then bolted from the alley, his legs pumping as fast as they could carry him. He knew where Rick Stone would be. He'd seen him before, parked outside the diner on 4th Street, nursing a coffee and smoking a cigarette. Danny, energized, ran, the bread and milk forgotten in the alley. He burst through the door of the diner, gasping for air. A few customers looked up, annoyed. And there, in the corner booth, sat Rick Stone. A mountain of a man, broad shoulders straining against a black leather vest, with the red and white Hell's Angels patch emblazoned on the back. His arms were a canvas of tattoos, his face weathered and hardened. his eyes like serious chips of steel. He glanced up at Danny, one eyebrow arched in surprised question. "Kid, you lost?" Danny stumbled forward, his voice barely a fearful whisper. "They're gonna kill you. In the alley, 4 guys. They have a gun. They're waiting for you." Rick's expression didn't change, but something mysterious shifted in his gaze. He leaned forward, his voice serious, low and steady. "What did you say?" Danny repeated it, faster this time, the words tumbling out. "They know you ride through Elm Street at 9. They're gonna ambush you. I heard them, I swear." Rick studied Danny for a long moment, then stood up. He was even more imposing standing, easily 6'4", 250 pounds of muscle and scars. He placed a hand on Danny's shoulder, heavy but not rough. "You got a name, kid?" "Danny, Daniel Johnson." "Danny." Rick nodded once, deeply, serious. "You just saved my life. You know that?" Danny shook his head, still trying to catch his breath. Rick pulled out his cell phone, made a quick call, then looked back at Danny. "You live around here?" "Yeah, Elm Street, apartment 4C. Rick's jaw tightened. "Go home, lock your doors, and don't say a word about this to anyone. You hear me?" Danny nodded and ran out of the diner, his heart still pounding. The next morning, Danny woke to a sound that rattled the windows of his apartment. A deep, guttural, surprised roar, like thunder rolling in from every direction at once. His mom was already at the window, her hand clamped over her mouth, her eyes surprised, wide with disbelief. "Danny, come here, now!" Danny stumbled out of bed and joined her at the window. What he saw made his breath, surprised, catch in his throat. Motorcycles! Surprised, dozens of them! No, more than that! Over 100! Over 100 big Harleys lined the entire street, engines idling, chrome gleaming in the morning sunlight. Leather vests everywhere. The red and white Hells Angels patches blazed like flags in the light. Neighbors stood on their porches, frozen, staring. And there, standing in the middle of the street, was Rick Stone. Danny's mother turned to him, her voice trembling. "What did you do?" I just warned him. Last night, some guys were gonna hurt him." Her face went pale. "Danny!" There was a knock at the door, a loud, serious knock. Danny's mother opened it slowly, and there stood Rick, flanked by 2 other bikers. Rick's expression was serious, but not angry. "So, Ms. Johnson, I'm Rick Stone. Your son saved my life last night. We need to talk." Miss Johnson let them in, her hands trembling. Rick crouched down so he was eye level with Danny. "You told your mom?" Danny nodded. "Good." Rick stood, looking at Danny's mother. "Ma'am, those men your son heard, they're part of a gang that's been causing trouble in this neighborhood for months. Last night, thanks to Danny, we called the police. 4 arrests, weapons charges, attempted murder. They're going away for a long time." Danny's mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Rick continued, "But here's the thing. People like that have friends, and word travels fast. So my brothers and I are here to make something very clear to anyone who might be thinking about coming after your family. What happened next felt like something out of a movie. 120 Hells Angels from 4 different chapters across the state had descended on Elm Street. Some were standing guard at every corner, arms crossed, eyes scanning the streets like sentries. Others were fixing things. The broken street lamp that had been dark for months? Fixed. The graffiti covering the side of Danny's building? Oh, painted over? The cracked steps leading up to the apartments? Repaired. A group of bikers hauled in bags of groceries, enough to fill Danny's mother's tiny kitchen to bursting. Eggs, milk, bread, meat, vegetables, even fresh fruit. Another biker, a woman with silver hair and a patch that read Road Captain, handed Miss Johnson an envelope. "This is for you," she said gently, "from all of us." Miss Johnson opened it with shaking hands. Inside was cash, a lot of cash, $10,000. "I can't accept this," she stammered, tears already streaming down her face. Rick stepped forward. "You can, and you will. Your son risked his life to save mine. That's not something we forget, ever." Another biker approached Danny, an older man with a grizzled beard and a scar running down his cheek. He handed Danny a small leather vest, just his size, with a patch that read, "Honorary Member." "You're one of us now, kid," the man said, his voice rough but kind. "You ever need anything, you call. You hear me?" Danny nodded, overwhelmed, unable to speak. Rick crouched down again, placing a hand on Danny's shoulder. "You did something most grown men wouldn't have the guts to do. You stood up when it mattered. That's what family does, and you're family now. So tell us, what would you have done? Would you have warned Rick? Would you have risked everything to save a stranger?" Before we end, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this need to be told. And comment below with the words, "Courage has no age," to show that you stand with Danny and every kid who's ever had to be braver than they should. Because sometimes the smallest voice carries the loudest truth. And sometimes the greatest act of heroism comes from the most unexpected hero. Danny learned that night that family isn't just the people you're born with. It's the people who show up when it matters most. And the Hells Angels? They, confident, showed up in force.